Yeah. And I have actually a couple things on my list of stuff that I want to go through. The first one is that new stuff is happening with the police force in Georgia in particular. There's a project that's being called Cop City. Basically, 1/3 of the Atlanta city budget is just policing. And the police are at a loss of what to do with that money because, I don't know, I guess you can only find so many ways to beat up a black person before you, like, you know, have other stuff that you need to do, or until you, like, you know, have discovered all the ways of doing that. So they wanted to use their money on other stuff, and what they settled on was a basically a compound. Actually, like, even more than a compound, a mock city in the forest, a nearby indigenous forest, mind you. So they're building this on indigenous land, which is you know, also an America moment. To practice urban warfare. See, in the United States, the police force is not a civilian institution. It is a paramilitary institution. Police get body armor and heavy weaponry, sometimes even armored vehicles. And the reason they get all this is to squash protests. They need, quote unquote, need that stuff to put down protests. So the city and some, like, police lobbying groups said, hey, we're going to raise all this money, in addition to the money that the city already spends on the police, for you to build this pretend city in the forest so we can go and pretend to beat up civilians when we're not actually beating up civilians. And of course, this has led to massive amounts of blowback because it is the most useless thing that a city could possibly spend their money on. I don't know, like, I actually don't know what the rationale is behind this. Like, it's just a self-fulfilling prophecy of bullshit where it's like, oh, well, the cops need it because, I don't know, they need it, I guess. I really don't know what anybody in the Atlanta City Council was smoking when they decided this. Probably money. That's probably what it was. They get a lot of money from police lobbying groups. There's, like, a ridiculous amount of money in that industry in America. You know? And it's very clear that this is the money speaking, because 70% of the residents were against this this new construction. They did a poll, and they opened up. This was a big mistake on the part of the city. They opened up a forum for public comment to try to give the veneer of the democratic process. And of course, just about every single comment was like, what the fuck are you doing? Why are you spending our money on this? And then they shut down the forum. You know. Of course, they went that route because, like, they can't have it for a vote. If they have it for a vote, then people would be able to outright say no, and that would actually matter, but you know, it's just one of the many hallmarks of a police state. You know, and it's sort of a very pure distillation of what I was saying about the police in another stream. I forget which one, but that the job of the police is actually, no, it was just last stream or the stream before. The job of the police is not to protect and serve. That's not even part of their job description. In some cases, they are not legally obligated to do this. Technically, they can be fired for not protecting and serving, for not, like, protecting people from crimes being committed against them. But they cannot be held to legal account for not doing that. So if somebody is murdered in front of a police officer, the police officer has no legal obligation to intervene to try and stop the murder. They will most likely get fired, but really what they're there to do is to protect the property rights of large businesses. And, well, I mean businesses in general. They're there to break windows and prevent windows from being broken. They don't care that much as an institution about, like, human life. Unless that human life is a business owner, in which case they care very much. So, it only makes sense that this project is sort of the product of many different business interests, all in not the same industry, but roughly the same industry of, like, I don't know what you would call it, quasi-defense, policing, just generally, you know, certified cop moment. And this is the sort of yeah, it's just it's always about the money, man. Oh, hello, zombie. Get out of here. You know, it's things like this, in case, you know, if ever you have yourself wondering, like, why do people say abolish the police, you know, or, like, defund the police, whatever, this stuff like this is why. It's a microcosm of the broader role that the police actually serve, which is not any sort of real public good. You know, certainly there, I mean, like, there does need to be, on some level, there needs to be a public safety or public monitoring, like, policing institution. But what that primarily needs to look like is de-escalation and a lot of times social work. Social work, investigation, you know, dispute resolution and whatnot. Not a whole lot of beat cops. And certainly not riot police in the way that we've been seeing. You know, and the idea is broadly that the current police structure in America, at least, and I think in other places as well, based on what I've seen recently, is so far gone as to be beyond salvage. You know, so basically you would have to abolish that system and build another one to do what you would actually want a policing institution to, in theory, do. So yes, anarchism moment from myself, ACAB. Put on my hat backwards, that's how cool I am. Fuck the police, etc. Ow! Idiot. No! He fucking killed me. I didn't know that it applied to any village that was nearby. Damn it, I had so much stuff on me. You know, those fucking pillager guys are bastards for killing me and interrupting my grand plans of building a nice vacation home. If only temporarily. Yeah, I know they don't always drop bones. But you know who else are bastards? Are the cops. I know I talked about this last stream, and I don't want to belabor the point too hard, but there was some stuff that happened literally just last night, just yesterday, that really cemented how bad the cops are, especially with like reinforcing the white supremacist system, etc., etc. Right? A young man by the name of Tyre Nichols was beaten to death by an ensemble of 5 cops. Not but like 100 meters away from his own home. For nothing. He had committed no crime. He was pulled over for a routine traffic stop, and these 5 cops, who have a background, as I'm gonna get into shortly, pulled him over and beat him up for 3 straight minutes, with one of them actually breaking their baton over his head from hitting him so hard. And then afterwards, they were on cam. They were hot. They had body cam footage of them laughing about it and bragging about it afterwards. Literally like cartoon villain shit. And in this instance, the circumstances were such, the stars aligned so perfectly that finally a police department came up and said, all right, we condemn this behavior. These guys are instantly fired, and there should be charges brought against them. And there are charges being brought against these 5 cops. But know that if any of these circumstances were changed, then these guys would have gotten off scot-free. The media would have done a whole media blackout story. They would have done what they typically do with the victim by listing all their priors and whatever. And there's even proof that they would have done this because there was also a white cop who was involved in the beating who was left out of the story entirely. They did not mention in all the news stories and stuff, they didn't mention that there was also a white cop beating up this black guy. They only mentioned the squad of 5 black cops. What's the rub here? The point is that however much, we try to... Is why you're an introvert? Yeah. Well, it's not the people that we should be hating here. People, I think, are pretty good, all things considered. It's the cops. It's the police institution itself. There are many police officers who, outside of the job, are probably perfectly fine people. But as a product of the job of policing, they've been turned into bastards, at least when they're on the job. The way that the police departments select for people is incredibly messed up. This is why that, 40% of police officers self-report to have abused their partner at some point in their relationship, because the police department is intentionally selecting for people like that. People who have a deficit of empathy and will be able to do horrible stuff like this. Because, like I said last stream, or this, it's either last stream or the stream before, the point of the police department is not to protect and serve. The point of the police department is to, it's to, basically control the general population, to keep people from getting too ornery about, whoever's in power. If these cops were white, they would have faced no repercussions for this. This is a product of a white supremacist, capital-driven police system. Again, this is why people like myself will say abolish the police. Do you need a kind of policing institution? Yes, you do. People can do some pretty shitty things. You do not need this policing institution to manage that. In fact, this policing institution is counterproductive. There are plenty of instances that I could cite where if you simply removed our existing police system and didn't replace it with anything, life would be substantially better. All around, this might not be true, but there are a worrying number of instances where that is the case. Yeah, and the police department is actually aware of this to a certain degree. They're at least aware of how in the wrong they are on this particular case for having put up with these guys' behavior at all. These guys already had complaints filed against them for in the Internal Affairs Bureau that does investigative work in the police department, and no action was taken. So the police chief and their police department was rampantly trying to do PR work because, of course, in the wake of this, there are a bunch of people who are going out and protesting, as they should, saying basically burn the whole system down, burn the fucker to the ground. And they are correct, which is why the police are so frantic in trying to calm them down, because they know that the popular opinion would be on their side, and this would be the spark of another mass movement, the likes of which we saw with the George Floyd protests back in 2020. And I suppose that's really all there is to say on this issue, that, cops fucking suck as a product of what their job requires them to do. This is another thing. It's not even necessarily the cops themselves that are necessarily bad people. You could have the same policing system filled entirely, 100%, with good, earnest people who want to serve their community, and that is the reason that they picked up policing. And this stuff would still happen because police are trained to think like this. it is more accelerated in the United States than it is somewhere like, I don't know, the Netherlands or France or Germany or Norway or Sweden. Any other developed country in Europe doesn't necessarily have a police department so accelerated to the point of this kind of flagrant, flippant violence happening. But every police department, every modern police department has this fatal flaw that, you know, police are not there to protect us. And in the United States, this can be borne out through historical examples as well, because the modern structure of police departments in America is based off of the Pinkerton gangs in the 1910s, in the 1890s through the 1920s, and slave patrols from the early 1800s, 1830s and 40s, up to that point. So our police is an amalgam of corporate goons and slave patrols, and you can imagine the kind of consequences that would bear out for black people. So, again, ACAB, anarchist moment, turn my hat backwards because I'm so cool, I say fuck the police and stuff. We need to tear this whole system down.